Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm Emer Zone, your host, and together we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little, but in the best possible way. Because life's too precious to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It's time to choose ourselves for lives that are fabulous and soulfully fulfilling. So let's go. So welcome back to the podcast. And today is sort of an important part of my journey as a sober woman, because about 4 years today, give or take, I put down what turned out to be my last drink. And I didn't know that that's necessarily what I was doing at the time. Maybe I thought I was just taking a break that was very much needed. But it was the right moment, the right time. And here I am 4 years later. And the woman that I'm talking to today was walking a very similar path to me. And she's just a few months behind me in her own journey. We were very good drinking buddies. Now we're both sober. And Nia Thomas, has turned her experience into her life's work as a sober coach. So this conversation today is for every woman who has looked at her glass and wondered, is this still serving me? Is this still who I want to be? There was some interesting research published. It was in 2025, and it found that perimenopausal women reported the highest levels of hazardous drinking, motivated by coping, the lowest well-being scores, and the most negative mood of any of the groups studied. So this is not a niche issue. It really is a midlife women's issue. It's a really important issue to many people, and I think it will resonate with many listeners today. Welcome, Nia. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute honor to be with you today.
Well, let's kind of look into your story, if you would, and kind of before we get to the turning point when you made that life-changing decision, describe what drinking looked like for you, like not the lowest of the low point, but maybe an ordinary Tuesday version of what that looked like when you were drinking at your peak.
It's a really good question. And actually, for me, it's been, for many years, my identity was Nia the drinker. And I think most of my friends, and maybe not even my friends either, just people that knew me, just described me as Nia the glass of bubbles in her hand. And in a weird, warped way, you know, I quite liked that image of myself, and had wrongly, my neural pathways had very much decided that was part of my identity, and that was a good thing, you know, to have that almost status. And what was really sad for me is that sort of persona was this happy-go-lucky, vibrant woman. And then on a Tuesday night, I'm sat alone with my quadruple, because they became bigger and bigger because obviously we weren't having the same effect, gin and tonic, alone, with no connection or friends, or, you know, even at that point, you know, the kids were probably in bed. And so I was literally sat on my own. It was really sad. And I think over the time, like I just mentioned, you know, one drink just wouldn't cut it. So it became 2, and it became 3. And I really didn't like myself doing that.
What do you think alcohol was doing for you? Like, if you think about what was the job, if you will, that alcohol was hired to do for you, what was that?
Well, there's the thing. Years of therapy have now told me that I was absolutely numbing all feelings. It was stopping me from feeling. And, you know, after that original, you know, that first 20 minutes of dopamine high, I'm chasing that high again. But it really, in those moments, it was giving me what I thought was connection, maybe with myself or whatever it might have been. But I was looking for something. I was looking to either feel or not feel, which sounds sort of contradictory. But I absolutely was numbing myself from reality of digging a bit deeper, I suppose. And I would be hiding away, thinking I had this under control. This was fine. I could do this. And everybody does this, right? On a Wednesday, right? Even how was your Tuesday night? How was your Wednesday looking elsewhere? Like we were all doing it, weren't we? And pretending to myself that everybody was. And it was just me.
When you think about, that research that I just mentioned at the top of our introduction there, showing that perimenopausal women in midlife are, this highest risk group for what they call hazardous drinking or, alcohol abuse. Does that land for you? Does that kind of resonate for you? Does that make sense? And why does that make sense for you?
It really, really does. And I think, again, we've only really been discussing perimenopause and menopause. I mean, here in the UK, for sure, around the Davina effect. So I want to say that's only like 5 years. Previous to that, it was...
What's the Davina?
So Davina McCall. So here in the UK, she's a very well-known presenter. And now she's more, rather on the TV, she's doing her own podcast, which is exceptional as well. But she essentially is a midlife woman and did some research and some documentaries, which are fantastic, around menopause and why aren't they discussed and why aren't we being listened to when we're going to the GP, just handed antidepressants and told to, just get on with it. Everybody's dealing with it. I want to say, maybe it's a bit longer now, 5 or 6 years ago, she did these documentaries and it became a massive talking point here in the UK around perimenopause in particular and the symptoms that we are experiencing. And, there's something like 50 odd and, nobody's discussed it. Certainly no one had discussed it with me growing up. So therefore it became this big conversation. And within that conversation, the last few years, it's very much been then a topic that has grown, and then alcohol's impact has been discussed. And so certainly now it aligns with the conversations that we're having, and I'm really passionate about turning the light on and discussing. But certainly when Davina brought it to the table, it then became apparent that it wasn't just us, that actually so many women are feeling all of these things and actually turning to alcohol or turning to other ways of trying to cope with the symptoms and life and the pressures of who we are as midlife women. Certainly things like anxiety are massive in perimenopause, but drinking alcohol and experiencing perimenopausal symptoms is absolute torture. And again, that's now being discussed more and more, that alcohol is a depressant. And, essentially I certainly was sort of self-medicating to try and switch the cycle and feel better. And actually I was really making myself worse. And again, there's tons of evidence around the hormone imbalance that we have with alcohol. As soon as you put the toxin in your body very cleverly throws all sorts of different hormones into the mix to try and balance you out. That takes days and weeks to come out of your body. So the whole time we as women are trying to regulate ourselves, and what I certainly was doing is just topping myself up each time. That was the best way to do it. So certainly perimenopause, alcohol, anxiety, all of those awful sort of
in the mix there. They feel very much entangled together. And I think what alcohol did for us when we were younger in a different sort of hormonal physiology is very different response when we get older. I just want to come to the part where that all important decision, walk me through that for you, that decision. Was there like a final straw, or was it more like the case was just slowly building itself until you couldn't ignore it?
Yeah, well, I had been very aware of my drinking habits compared to other people for probably my whole life. I'd come from sadly, a background of my entire family having a disordered relationship and an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And so I was very aware of how disruptive and painful alcohol can be. And so it was sort of creeping up. And I think, again, when I was sat there on a Tuesday night on my own, those sort of question marks popping into my head. So around 2018, I really started to look, because the industry, alcohol-free industry, had sort of started to bubble up and be a bit more interesting. So I'd started to look, because I'm very much an all or nothing person, look into alternatives of what was out there. I'd found some bubbles that I thought looked okay, had green tea in it. I was like, oh, that's a bit of me, I'll have that. So about 2018, I started to look into it a bit more and start to really question myself. And then 2020 obviously came around, and that was a crazy time.
Yeah.
And I actually specifically remember it was Mother's Day in March 2020, and the whole world had just heard by Crazy Boris that we had to lock down. And it was Mother's Day, like I say. My husband was working in an industry where he had a lot of people relying on updates, so he had to go off to work. It was a Sunday night. And then my girls disappeared off to talk to their friends as well. And I was sat there on my own in the lounge with this huge gin and tonic. And I just thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm sat, it's 9:20 on a Sunday night. And here I am on my own having this drink. This didn't feel good. I didn't like who I was. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna stop drinking whilst we're in lockdown, not knowing how long that was gonna be. And because I am who I am, I'm like, well, I said that's what I'm gonna do, so therefore I'm gonna do. And so there I was, and I did do 7 months of sobriety. And during that period of time, my beloved mother was diagnosed with cancer. And actually, it was a very quick diagnosis to her death of just over 8 weeks. And I was completely sober during that time, which actually gave me the most beautiful, memorable moments with her. I mean, she was 500 miles away, lockdown, but our conversations, and I did manage to get up there. But had it not have been for me already being sober, those last 8 weeks of her life would have been so different for me. And that gave me huge power to myself. So that was 2020. However, me thinking, I could just have some champagne on special occasions. I can do that. The dreaded moderation. That is not something that I could actually do. I thought I could, but there was a birthday, then there was another birthday, then it was this, and then it was that, and it just became
everything's a celebration then.
Literally opening the curtains in the morning. Oh, let's have a drink. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So that sort of took me through to 2022. And then in 2022...
So 2022 was the final, this was the decision. But you'd already had 7 months sober during lockdown, which is incredible because that's when lots of drinking peaked for many people.
Yeah.
But for you, that was a sober time. Then you come back out, you try the moderation, and then this, I can't do moderation. What was this decision like then?
That was a big decision, because actually the biggest difference between 2020 and 2022 was thanks to you, in that we had a conversation about therapy. And I very clearly remember you saying to me, well, surely, why aren't you in therapy? And I said, I don't know. why aren't I in therapy? I tell everybody, well, you should go and get support, and again, I always give to others what I actually needed myself.
Yeah.
So I got myself into therapy. She was very much a compassion-led therapist. And during that time, I started to love myself and like myself. Let's start with like, actually. Love's a bit much, but I started to like myself and recognize, actually, life's been tough. Life's been a bit serious. And so during that period, I started to just be kinder to myself and recognize that I was struggling, and that was okay. And actually, the way I was struggling was also okay. And I didn't have to pretend that I was struggling. And I could mention that perhaps life was a bit challenging, and I wanted to explore other ways to support myself. So fast forward to 2 years of week in therapy, and another kind of, I wouldn't say rock bottom, because it was very much a gradual, but there was a moment where I was at a work function with my husband representing. And again, because of how I'm actually an introvert, and people wouldn't know that, but I struggle in social situations, particularly groups. And so whenever it came to a business function, I would very much need a drink, liquid courage, which actually was the worst thing that could happen, because then goodness knows what would happen on the third or fourth. So that evening, I remember thinking to myself, what have you just said? Have you just embarrassed your husband? And it was just an awful, shameful moment for me. And I was horrified. And that's when I really looked inward. I had growing teenagers looking to me to role model. And that's been, one of my finest achievements are my beautiful young women. And for them watching, I really, really did not want to let them down. But now here I am thinking, I don't want to let myself down either.
Exactly.
My world was becoming small. I was getting smaller. And again, thanks to you and your wonderful books and your wonderful wisdom, I want to take up space, and I want to role model that for my children. So in 2022, the 10th of October, I put that glass down, and it has changed my life, my relationships, my everything. I mean, I literally could spend an hour and a half telling you about just how, I'm not even going to say how good it is, because it's not even about being good. It's just so freeing.
And I could feel your emotion in your voice when you said about that date and putting that glass down. Did you know when you put that glass down, that was it? That was it.
Yeah. Because I am that black or white, all or nothing. I did the same with smoking. I literally had 3 cigarettes left in my packet, and I said, this is my last cigarette. If I say I'm going to do something, that's it. I'm not doing it again. And even though I probably wouldn't have said never, ever, in my heart of hearts, I very easily can play the tape forward now in my mind. That my pain point is the embarrassment, even though I've had this conversation with my children and with my husband, and they've not once said, oh, Mum, yeah, or darling, yes, you did embarrass me. That's never been said. They've never said that to me. But for me, the horror that I play in my mind that I could have embarrassed him or them, it's painful. It's painful.
Totally.
Also, I wanted to be the woman I knew I could be. And you and I have had many conversations over the years, and you've been, a biggest cheerleader for me. But I genuinely knew I had more. And so giving up alcohol, it isn't giving up, because I'm gaining so much more. And I did that when I was 48. And I kept thinking to myself, I can't do it before my 50th, because, I'm going to hopefully go somewhere really nice, and I might even go business class. And what about the champagne?
Yeah, I know.
How ridiculous that I was not going to do something for a liquid. This is just a liquid. And it's just crazy to me now, but at the time, that's how entrenched I was.
And I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think it doesn't get spoken of quite so much. One of the things that when we stop drinking, you don't just lose that liquid, you also grieve other things. So what did you grieve? I know there are many benefits, but there's also the reality of, that last glass being put down. It's not just the alcohol.
Exactly that. And I think because I'd been in this space since sort of 2018, particularly, that's the date that really sticks in my mind. It had been a very long grieving process. And that's where I sort of kept keeping myself stuck. I was on this merry-go-round of like this constant negotiation in my mind. And there would be moments of, yeah, of course you can do this. And moments of, oh my God, that's too difficult. And I think, again, spending time with you, for example, how can I not have done that? I came to watch you run the Dublin Marathon, and what do you mean we're not going to have a glass of champagne afterwards? I mean, those sort of things, because ridiculously, this liquid was, to me, the glue to us having a connection. I mean, it's just crazy to me now. And actually, if I really stripped it back, but that's what I hadn't been ever doing because I'd been numbing it or masking it. If I really stripped it back, what did I want from that evening? And I just wanted to be with you, not the champagne. And the irony is, I probably would have had a bottle and a half or two and not even remembered the time with you. And that's actually what I wanted the most. And so I think the grieving part became, well, how can I have a good time without the glass? How can I spend time with that person without having this? Because it was so ingrained in my mind that you can't do one without that. I couldn't have a roast dinner, a Sunday roast, without a glass of red wine, a steak without a red. Ridiculous. The links in my brain that you couldn't enjoy something without it, this liquid, now when I say it, I see it for what it is. But back then, oh my goodness, it kept me stuck. And I would be, there's been this ridiculous article written last week about the benefits of alcohol. And that I would have grasped that back.
Well, I loved those when I was drinking.
I loved it. I probably would have shared it with you. Look, it's all great, in the WhatsApp group, and I would have been probably on an algorithm somewhere that would keep telling me all this stuff, and that was the crazy thing, because actually people would look at me and think, well, she's really healthy and looks after her well-being, and this sort of outward appearance that I had, but I certainly wouldn't have ever imagined us spending time together or having a roast dinner or going to the Maldives for my 50th and not having a drop of alcohol. I would have said, you are talking crazy. What do you mean? I'm going on holiday and not drinking, or going somewhere in the sunshine at all and not having a glass of rosé, or, anywhere with a free bar.
I think when you make that change and you go into, you walk into that next chapter of your life that is alcohol free. And I love the alcohol free more, I think, than sober, because it does feel very freeing in some ways. But there is this sort of like, how will I be around these other people now that I'm not drinking? And as I mentioned, I was a little bit before you. And one of my big things was like, oh, I have such drinking history with Nia. It's going to be kind of weird because I really enjoy drinking with Nia.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
So there were other people for you. Nia lives in the UK now. I live in the US, so we don't see each other in person that much. But when you began your journey, Nia, what was that like for you, navigating that landscape? It's like, I'm walking into this room where I used to be a drinker and now I'm alcohol free, or I have a history and a connection with this person where it's always a G&T, or we have that glass of wine in the evening. How did that feel for you, and how did you cope with that?
It was really scary. And actually, I don't think you and I even told one another that we were doing what we were doing, which was really interesting, because I remember vividly you and I messaging, and you messaged me and you said something about you'd been 6 months alcohol free. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm 6 days. And I know that sounds really crazy to someone, like, what do you mean 6 days? You're counting 6 days? But I really was. I mean, and the fact that it was 6, not 5, was also a major deal, because that meant it was a weekend. I'd done a weekend too, and so I didn't tell anyone. I told my husband, but he has been phenomenal anyway. He's never once told me not to do anything. He's probably too scared to, but no. We've been together 28 years. He knows me well. He's never once discouraged me, I should say, or thrown shade. Never thrown shade.
I think that's really important, that supportive people, that you don't have that judgment over your shoulder when you're trying to do something like this.
Exactly, because there's enough judgment coming from myself.
Yes. It's from the inside out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's enough for everyone. But those early days were major, and I remember, because I take time to process things, and certainly without alcohol in the mix, finding words for me does take time, and I like to try and work it out for myself, and then find those words, and then express those to other people. So I do remember telling one of my other close friends, and I couldn't quite articulate what I wanted to say, because I didn't want people to think, I don't know, I still guess was caring what other people thought. And actually, rather than stand in my decision and, with chest, as they say, which I really will now, I was keeping it very under wraps, to the point where people still now at 3.5 years don't know that I don't drink alcohol, because they still see the pictures of me holding a crystal glass, but they don't know that actually it's bubbles with benefits in it. It's not Bollinger anymore. And so, I've really honed my brave, because us chatting about it now, launching a business, there are people that just don't know, because finding those words and being in a safe space without judgment, it was tricky. And still now people just don't know.
Yeah, I remember that. They do now. I remember that too, not telling anybody, and it being something very private. And I think that was because it felt like you were nurturing something that was very fragile, and it needed to be done quietly until it felt like it had some stability to it. It was scary. And when you think about the very early days and the early time in sobriety of being alcohol free, what was a thing that maybe nobody had warned you about, or that you didn't expect from that very beginning?
I think feeling that vulnerability was uncomfortable. Feeling was uncomfortable. I hadn't felt in a long time. And you have to, or I certainly sat with, life still comes at you thick and fast. There was a whole heap of stuff going on, and it just kept coming. And I just kept thinking, wow, okay, how do I deal with this? Oh, I have to feel this. Oh, I still have to sit with this. And journaling was key to how because again, I was keeping things to myself. So journaling became absolutely a necessity for me. And I've never read back on them. I never look back on them ever. And it really enabled me to, when I write, I say some good stuff. And I was really in fact, I've never ever written in my journal and not had a light bulb moment. I think, goodness me, it's within me. I actually know what I need to do. And so that was key. Really looking after myself as well. I do look after myself anyway, in terms of exercise, water, I do all the stuff. I'm so annoying. I literally do all the things I'm supposed to do, and some, because I'm extra. So I really had to lock in to looking after myself because, I can't lie. It's not just a magic moment where you wake up and your world is Mary Poppins and Bluebird singing. It was tough. There was not great sleep. There was the sugar craving. I mean, anybody that would know me would think, oh no, Nia loves cheese and bread or something, or would I even have that? Nuts and probably a rice cake. But anyway, the point was that the sugar hit, and it was
big surprise.
I had never appreciated that alcohol's got so much sugar in it. Of course, my body's been used to having that. So that sort of threw me off a little bit. And so it took time, and it really did. I kept having to play this forward. This is for you're nourishing yourself. You're not depleting.
Yeah.
And that, those little internal affirmations for me. Why am I doing this? Really reminding myself of the whys, because it did take some time. And, I can't lie. I became a little bit quieter around people. I perhaps didn't go out as much as maybe I once would have, just until I felt a bit more secure before I could say it with chest. And, I could have come up with some sort of, I'm on, medication or whatever it might be. But I have this sort of brutal authenticity about me. I'm a little bit too honest sometimes. So I just kept myself to myself until I felt stronger. But what was amazing is that I had an ally, which, without that, it's a lonely business. I mean, I did a lot of research on community. And, the reason I had actually really made that jump is, yes, the therapy, but I'd also read Janie Lee Grace's book, Happy, Healthy, Sober, which really resonated with me because it had healthy on there.
Yeah.
And again, like you, I don't particularly like the word sober just because it's got some stigma still around it. But alcohol-free, you're right, it has that freedom. Teetotal, again, is something that I've used a play on words and sort of calling myself Mrs. Teetotal. And that's sort of appealing to our sort of age group, because that's, teetotal was something that you would want to say. But the book for me, it was around the sort of health aspect, the well-being piece, and reading that gave me such validation that it wasn't just me.
I love that you brought that up about the health bit, because you've signaled it before in our conversation here about you were doing loads of other things. You had a very healthy life. We used to work out together a lot when I lived in the UK, in our local gym. You're going to classes every day. You have said sort of all or nothing in many ways, like very healthy eating. So you were everything looked really healthy, and then alcohol was sitting in the corner kind of doing its job as well. So it was sort of this, I guess for you, it was kind of masking a lot, right? So there's so much health being projected of well-being, and I'm prioritizing that. And the kind of the thing that was sitting in the background was the alcohol that you just couldn't quite let go of until you could. But who are you now, do you think? Like, who have you become? You're a different person, alcohol-free. You're not just healthier by the metrics, you're different as well. How would you say you are now without drink?
And that's the thing, is I'm still learning. Who am I now? And I'm really curious about myself. And I'm in a stage of my life where, my children are now adults. One lives at home, but the other's at uni. They need me in different ways. And the way I can show up for them now is exactly the woman I wanted to be. I found something I'd written when the kids were 3 and 5, I think. And it talked about what I wanted to be for my children. And it was present, and they're connected, a safe space, all of these things. And I read that to my children. They said, Mum, that's exactly what you are. This is, I know, right? And it was this, but I know, hand on heart, Emma, I would not have that if I was still drinking, because it was just the booze elevator had one way. I was going down.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was having to have another little more, another, just to get the same hit, it was just not going to end well. And I'm still, like, even now at 3.5 years, I'm still learning so much about what do I actually like and what do I need, you know, to actually ask myself first, what do I need? And that has come in partnership with the fact that the girls are adults now.
Yeah.
You know, if my kids were 3 and 5 still, it would be different. But right now, for me, I'm in a very fortuitous space in that I can spend time looking at what I need and unpacking what I need. And right now, I feel very brave. And I really like this. And, you know, the fire horse year, and it's sort of that energy of beginning, it all seems to have aligned. And, you know, I'm normally a sort of an instant person, you know, well, I want something now. And so for me to sort of have this sort of slow burn for 3.5 years of being alcohol free before I feel like I do now, I'm actually really proud of myself. And I'm really exploring what next.
So Nia, learning from all of your journey now, you've decided to step forward and be somebody for somebody who is struggling today. Can you tell me a little bit now about what you're offering? Because now you've trained and qualified as a sober coach and you are stepping up to serve other women. So tell us like what the name of that business is and who you are helping.
Thank you. So yes, I've set up Cloudy to Clarity because that is very much how things were for me in my life. So I coach women online, and I very much want to support and serve those women who feel they would like a safe space, non-judgmental space to really be honest and be guided to the positives and the hope and the freedom that being alcohol free will give them. It's something that I wished I had found. And I trained with Janie Lee Grace, who's an incredible voice for alcohol free here in the UK. And I'm very proud to now be part of that community and serve those women that feel alone.
And we've talked a lot about this before, about this area of kind of grey drinking. I mean, most of the women who you work with, you know, they're probably not waking up in ditches, right? They're not at this, you know, that level of rock bottom. They're functioning. Maybe they're successful. Maybe they're masking really well, right? But it's that interior feeling of, you know, am I bad enough to need help? I think that resonated for me a lot because sober coaching wasn't really that available.
No.
And I don't know about you, probably this will resonate, but I was not going to go to AA because that label alcoholic was not something that I felt belonged to me. So Can you speak to that for that woman who's, you know.
Exactly. So, and that's the thing, even the term grey area drinker still doesn't really, you know, it's not a language, it's not a phrase that people are familiar with. And, you know, we need to find a phrase, but like you say, it's somebody that's not rock bottom. And yes, you might have had some rock bottom moments, but ultimately the woman that I'm speaking to is somebody that is drinking more than they want to. And they are sensing they are not fulfilling themselves. Then they have more to give to themselves and to their lives. And they are questioning whether what life would look like for them without alcohol in the mix. And I feel like these women are looking after themselves already. You know, they are keen to maintain their fitness, their well-being. They are curious about ways to support their lives that are benefiting them. and perhaps are just feeling they're not quite reaching those goals. Something is putting them back. And essentially my role is more of a life coach, but with sobriety underpinning.
Yeah.
It's a holistic approach to that person's life, that woman's life. And it's so particular to her. Each of us have our own stories. No two are the same.
Yeah.
But essentially I am able to hear that person's story and really listen to what they're not saying too.
Exactly.
And really understand that uniqueness about their story and try and unravel it for them so they can then make the decisions. I'm not making any decisions for this person. It's very much their life. But what I will do is, be honest. And people need honesty, right? And it's that honesty in a way from somebody who's walked the walk. And I really feel that if I had this opportunity to be able to just be really myself and really open without the labels, without the shame, I was giving that to myself enough. And so, let's just be in a space where they are themselves.
And as you say, people drink for different reasons. It's solving different problems in everybody. So it is a very holistic approach. So for the woman listening to this and she recognizes herself, not in the rock bottom version, but in the ordinary Tuesday version, what's one thing that you would want her to take away from this conversation today?
I really would like them to be more compassionate to themselves and tell themselves that actually it is hard and it's okay. And you deserve to have a conversation with somebody who completely gets it.
I love that. Yeah. You deserve to have a conversation with somebody compassionate who will hear you.
Yeah.
The podcast is obviously called Girl, Choose Yourself. Over 3 years in, sober, alcohol-free, building something new. What does choosing yourself mean to you now, Nia?
It means excitement for me. I genuinely feel I'm 52 now and I could live another 52 years. And I feel like I want to say life is beginning for me now. It really holds excitement and opportunity and a space where I can do a bit of trailblazing. I feel like this could be my time. I've still got those gorgeous girls of mine looking and seeing and wondering, and I feel there's a fire in my belly, and I feel brave.
I can hear it. I can hear the fire. Nia Thomas, thank you so much for being with us today and really bringing that vulnerability to this space and trusting me with your story and this audience. If you are listening to this today and you would like some help from Nia and her story resonates, you will find all the details on how to contact her and start a conversation in the show notes. You can follow her on Instagram, From Cloudy to Clarity. You'll find that link there too. Thank you so much, Nia.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning into the episode this week. I hope you got a lot out of it. And if you did, please share it with somebody who you feel would benefit. And leave a review. Always greatly appreciated. Lots of free and paid resources to take things a step further. You can find those in the show notes. And hey, if nobody's told you this yet today, you are amazing. And the world is a far more beautiful place because you're here with us all. Stay cool. Bye.